What is happening, NBA fans? Welcome into another week of Dropping Dimes. I'm your host, Matt Nost. And as you read from the title, you saw on the YouTube or podcast feed of your choice right across the top. Today, we are talking about the All-Stars. Now, the final fan voting is set to end, I think, in the next 3 days. So if you haven't voted yet, you can head over to NBA.com. You could do it on their app. There's a bunch of different ways if you'd like to vote. You can get your vote in. And I have voted several times. My roster has changed since the voting was open to the public, just because it's been a decent amount of time. I think I've voted like 5-6 times now. I haven't done any of the retweeting from accounts because one retweet equals one vote type of thing. I haven't done that, but I have submitted my vote, and we'll get into which players I think should start and who the reserves should be. I'm going to go through all of it. Sorry, I got one of those random hairs hanging down. It's right in my fucking vision. It's driving me nuts. Anyway, didn't get it. So we're going to go through top to bottom, starting with the starters in the conferences and the reserves. I imagine I'll just start with one conference and then go front to back, top to bottom, and then switch over to the other conference and go top to bottom. And in each conference on the reserves, I do have a slot open for your input because I don't have a definitive view specifically of one position, the same position in each conference. I struggle to come up with a third. So we're going to jump right in. The way the All-Star game works as far as who's eligible, what positions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For your starters, you get 2 guards and you get 3 front court players. So forwards and centers, count for front court players. So 2 guards, 3 front court. And my first bit of homerism starts here. For my guards, I'm putting DeRozan and LaVine. Now, the weird thing about that is DeRozan plays the forward. And for some reason, in All-Star voting, he is eligible only as a guard. I don't know why. He plays as a forward pretty much always. If I had to guess, I would say about 95% of the time, DeRozan plays as a forward. And for some reason, on the fan voting, he is listed as a guard. So whatever. DeRozan, I think, is a no-brainer. LaVine is where, it's been a long time since I think that the Bulls should have a representative, let alone 2 representatives on the list. And LaVine's shooting is the perfect complement to DeRozan. They are an incredible 1-2, better than I anticipated. I liked the signing of DeRozan, but the way that these two complement each other, it's pretty fantastic. And you can make a case for quite a few guys in place of LaVine in that spot. And with now injuries taking him out of the starting lineup with the knee issue, more than likely he is going to get bumped out of the starter's role and he'll get a reserve spot. But personally, I'm going to put him in as a starter. I don't give a shit what you think. I'm going to stick by it. I am perfectly fine with that. Last year, I struggled to put him on as a reserve because I'd like to think of myself as honest when it comes to my team. And my problem with DeRozan was his turnovers last year, and his defense wasn't the best. But his turnovers, just if you're watching it, you're like, God, you are killing us with these. Yes, we need you to do everything that you're doing on offense, but if you could take down these turnovers by 1 to 2 a game, it would make a tremendous difference over the course of a season in terms of keeping us in more games, and potentially we don't need these as often, these late game heroics from you. But that's being nitpicky. Plus, they were nowhere near the position they're at now, which is struggling to hold on to first place in the East in the midst of a 4-game slide, which was partially inevitable. I mean, you're going to lose some games. But that Warriors game, I mean, man, oh man, did we get just slapped upside the head. But it could be, since I started doing this show, the first time I have been a full-on homer when it comes to my team. That's it. So I am going to take those two. If you want to take exception with LaVine being on there, I'm not going to fight you. But, my show, so fuck it. I'm putting LaVine on there. The 3 front court players are all no-brainers at this point. Giannis, KD, and Embiid, even if KD sits out for the full duration of the time that they say he's going to sit out, I still think he deserves to be voted in as a starter. Until he went out, he's technically in the lead for MVP. He's playing incredible basketball. And all 3 of them. I mean, Embiid has come on late, as of late, rather, and just looks like a monster. And which only then fuels now the speculation about a Simmons trade all the more, because do you want to waste another year of Embiid's prime when he is doing everything in his power to will this team into the playoffs itself and out of the play-in game and really to vie for some sort of contender status? Do I think they're actually contenders? No, I don't. They still have issues across the board. And I think that any team with real legs would probably smoke them. Just the pace alone would kill them. Hence the maybe we're willing to settle for Simmons. And Detroit reached out with a decent offer, and apparently Philly's going to shoot that down. It was headlined by Jeremy Grant, but then Jeremy Grant's people came out and said, listen, he only wants to go to a team where he's going to have a front and center offensive role, and he's looking for a 4-year, I want to say it was in the ballpark of 120 million-ish per year. Or not per year, pardon me, overall. So 30-ish per year for 4 years. It's not out of the cards for Jeremy Grant, but this isn't the best offseason, more than likely, to be a free agent. But we'll see. I'm guessing somebody would more than likely be able to pony up to get him. And then Giannis being the third of that. Giannis is playing amazing basketball once again. I mean, I think 4 of those 5 are unimpeachable as far as choices. DeRozan, Giannis, KD, and Embiid. I think those are your 4 just locks in the East. I don't think anybody is going to jump up to surpass. And LaVine is the question mark. Trae Young's getting a lot of love as of late. I have not voted for him in my All-Star voting. For various reasons, but so those are my 5 starters as of right now. I'd be surprised if anybody has any real objection to that outside of LaVine. If you want to put somebody in his place, totally, there you go. No problem with that. Now, the reserves are where it gets fucking tricky as all hell. So the way technically the reserves work, and I may throw the rules out on this, but the way the reserves work are you get 2 guards, 3 forwards, and then 2 wild cards, whatever position you want. Now, I kind of wish all 7 were just wild cards, because finding 3 front court players in the East stretches the boundaries of who I think should be in this game. Personally, that's me. Because at guard, I think we're stacked. I think you have choices for days. There are 5 legitimate guys I think should be in the discussion. Maybe even 6 or 7 in the discussion to make this all-star team. So here are the guards that I think should be in contention: James Harden, LaMelo Ball, Trae Young, Darius Garland, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, maybe even Tyler Hero, Bradley Beal, and I think it ends there. Now, Beal, he's out. He's gone. Tyler, I think, would suffer by the fact that, as of right now, if I had to guess, Jimmy will get voted in by the coaches, and he'll be one of the reserve forwards, and he made one of my reserve forwards. But after that, dude, Harden, LaMelo, Trae, Darius, VanVleet, I think all genuinely deserve. And then I feel bad for Kyle Lowry because he should be in this discussion as well. His stats are solid as can be, and the Heat have been climbing right up the charts without Bam and without Jimmy. Jimmy's been back for the past 3-4 games, but he's been basically in and out of the lineup for a decent amount of time now. Although so long as he stays healthy, he'll hit any kind of games threshold. And the fact that he's back in playing again. If he was now out on the tail end, which is going to happen in the West with a bunch of guys, if they're now suddenly out and they've already missed some games, even if they're projected to come back in the next 2 weeks, I think it's more difficult as opposed to it's the equivalent of here in the States in college football. If you lose in the beginning part of the season, you can still vie for the national championship so long as you win out. Whereas on the flip side, if you're winning all season and you lose late, it drops you out of contention much harder. So I think the same kind of applies. There's a bit of a recency bias. And if you're voting for them, they're going to play, as opposed to I'm voting for them, they're going to be out, so we're going to have to find an injury replacement anyway. So this is just an honorary type of thing. We're not against those. But I think as far as the voting mentality, you kind of skew towards those that are playing when you're going to cast your actual ballot. So anyway, of those guards, I'm leaning towards the 5 of Harden, LaMelo, Trae, Garland, and VanVleet. Now, here is where my bias against Trae Young comes into, because I don't want to put Trae Young on this team, even though I'm willing to put VanVleet on this team. Trae Young's offense is, second to none. Guy can score with anybody, and also his assists are at an all-star level, practically an all-NBA level as well. His defense just sucks, and that team is in utter disarray, and everybody, I think, by and large, assumed that last year's playoff push was indicative of what they're going to be for the next 3 to 5 years. A collection of young guys who are incredibly hungry and are going to be a tough out every night. And so far this season, their defense has just looked like dog shit. If you watch them, you're like, this is ridiculous. It's tough to watch. I don't enjoy watching Hawks games. So my bias towards the fact that I know he is an outright Olay on defense. And then that being said, the king of the Olays, Harden, I have in this mix. And Harden's numbers are down, but at the same time, it's when you watch that team, it's like, look, if you take Durant off, yes, they're nowhere near. And if Harden isn't there and it's just Durant, that's why Durant is a no-brainer. I'm struggling to put a second net on there, but they've been so good. It's like, well, you can easily make a case at number 2 in the East that they should deserve 2 All-Stars. And when you have a caliber of name like a James Harden, former MVP, a guy that was in the MVP discussion for year on end, ended up second and third in voting. I realize that's trading on the past for the present, but that does carry some weight. And if these other guys are going to unseat someone like that, they really need to be putting up stats that just destroy him, so it doesn't even make you question whether or not. And you have to look at it in the individual's role on their team itself. And that's the case for Trae Young. and also for Van Vliet. I want all 5 of those guys. So why don't we shelve that discussion and we'll move on to the forwards? And this is where I'm going to need your help because I don't have a third forward. And if I had my druthers, here's where I'd take one of the forwards away and add in a wild card and put a 5th guard in there because I think there are way more guards that are deserving of this all-star nod than there are of forwards, in my opinion. I have 2 forwards making it, which is Jared Allen and Jimmy Butler. And to be perfectly honest, the first time I voted, I actually voted Evan Mobley as one of my starters. And then the next time around, I voted. This is before Embiid really started to cook. And then I voted for Jared Allen. So I've had both. I think ultimately, Allen is a little bit more key to what they're doing, but Mobley is the future. And there have been those stretches when Mobley was out, and they're just nowhere near the team that they are when he's in. And a testament to them, they've been on a nice little win streak. And I was fearful that the loss of Rubio was really going to tank them. But my 2 that I'm putting on are Jared Allen and Jimmy Butler. Now, Jimmy is right at that game's threshold of have they played enough to be deserving of having a spot on this roster. And then you look at the Heat as a whole, and you're like, look, they got 3 guys that are all playing really excellent basketball. And Bam's been out for so long that he merits no real consideration. Had he been playing, Bam would be in this discussion as well, but he just hasn't played anywhere near enough games. The difference of it's like 7, 8 games that he's missed more than other guys that have missed. That's a huge chunk. That's almost, thus far what we played, you're nearing 8 to 10% of the season more that you've missed than other guys that have missed games. And I think that just takes Bam out of the equation. So who do you guys think should be that third final, the forward spot? Or should we just say, screw it, my votes don't count anyway, and we should just move on to adding another guard, which I technically haven't settled on? I mean, your options would be Evan Mobley, but that would be 2 front court players from the Cavs, and I just don't really see a world in which that should be the case. Chris Middleton, a solid choice. Jason Tatum, Vucevic, Sabonis. If you want to give me Miles Bridges as well, I'd love to hear the argument. I think those are your choices. And each of those underwhelms me in various different ways. Are all those players talented? Yeah, I fully agree to that. I mean, I think the one that's more than likely going to make this team is Jason Tatum. But given the up and down nature, the Celtics are suffering from the same thing that they've been suffering from since Jason and Jalen have been the leaders of the team, which is not give a shit-itis certain nights. And then their coach constantly calling them out in the media. That can't be healthy. But this team, depending on what night you watch them, man, certain nights they look like world beaters, and most nights they look average. Nothing special. So should we reward somebody like Tatum? And once again, I'm not voting on any of this. Neither are any of you. We're just having a discussion about the potential of an all-star, but I'm not buying it. And like Sabonis is a great talent, but that team is terrible. You can't, foist it all onto his shoulders. But at the same time, the buck has to stop somewhere. And it seems as likely a place. Vooch, I don't think gets it because there's already 2 Bulls that are pretty much locks to make this team, and there's no way they're going to get 3 unless the Bulls go on another 10-game win streak or 9-game win streak and suddenly jump out to a dramatic lead in the East. But I don't really see that happening again. And that would bolster Vucevic's case because Levine is going to be out for that stretch for a chunk of it. If they were to do something like that again. So it'd be the DeRozan and Vooch show. And then you could talk yourself into the potential chance of Vucevic making it. But as of right now, I just don't really foresee that, even though there's a glaring, deficit in the forward position. And as far as Middleton, technically, I didn't bring up Drew Holiday. Of the two other Bucks, I think Drew Holiday has the better case to make an All-Star. That tells you throw his. So now we got 7 guys on the guard front that are deserving of this. I just think he's slightly more deserving than Chris Middleton. So Chris Middleton is not in the mix for me. So my 2 locks are Jared Allen and Jimmy Butler. Do you guys in the chat have any thoughts? I mean, I am open to any kind of suggestions. And right now, the chat has turned into a "What's wrong with the Hawks?" and good luck trying to decipher that. Um, you know, Yuri says the Hawks struggle despite having some great individual talent. They do. They have a collection of great individual talent that right now during this regular season cannot get it together in the slightest. But I'd say screw it. I say we only take 2 forwards. We add an extra guard, and we make our decision with 5 guard spots as opposed to 4. And who cares? Uh, I've made my votes for the starters, and the coaches are going to be choosing. So let the 30 coaches hash that out and figure out, and we'll have theirs. So then, if we're going to go with 5 guards, I think my locks are James Harden, LaMelo Ball, and Darius Garland. We have 2 spots left, and we have 4 guys vying for it, which is Trae Young, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, and Drew Holiday. Apologies to Brad Beal. You are out. And there we go. So 4 guys left for 2 spots. Trae Young, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, and Drew Holiday. I lean towards this is once again my bias. VanVleet over Young. Because at least right now, I believe the Raptors are frisky and a pain in the ass night in, night out. And I think a lot of that comes with the leadership and steady hand of VanVleet. Even though in the standings, there's not a huge difference between the two. I mean, technically, right now, the Raptors sit in 9th position and the Hawks are in 12th. So they're not too far difference, but it's a 4-game disparity between the two. So the Hawks are 4 games back of that 9/10 spot, which is the Raptors Celtics. They're both 5.5 games out of first place, whereas the Hawks are 9.5 games. So because of that, I would lean towards giving the nod to VanVleet. Because at this point, on some level, I feel like if you reward Trae Young, then it's the equivalent of most years, the rookie of the year goes to the guy that gets the most shots up. Just because his team sucks. There's a reason they were drafted in that position, and they have the opportunity to fire away whenever they like. And the Hawks are just pretty terrible right now. And I don't feel like rewarding somebody that, is the leader of a team that is that mediocre. So we have 1 spot left then. 1 spot. So it's Trae Young, Kyle Lowry, or Drew Holiday. I feel like you need to reward the Heat and the consistency of what they've been doing. As much as I like Drew, the Heat have been doing this without a bunch of their best players. And they're, once again, Spoelstra is getting the most out of guys you've never heard of until this season, who are putting in great numbers or filling the gaps whenever they need it. They've got 2, 3 guys that are playing lights out, and you don't know their names, and they're pretty excellent. Um, and I think shepherding that group is Lowry. So I think I would lean towards Kyle Lowry in that final position, and I would force Trae Young out. I know that's not going to be what happens. I know Trae Young is going to make this team. I'm just not a big fan. Um, and that's also my bias. I've never been a Trae Young fan. I recognize the guy's talent. But it's, unless you're going to lead your team like James Harden did and play zero defense, I think that's the only way you really jump into this conversation. You need to be so amazing on offense that, yes, we all acknowledge that the defense could use improvement, but franchise and organization wide will make up for that from other players and in the margins. And right now, a team is a vat of dysfunction. John Collins wants out. They just dumped Camp Reddish. Now, they dumped Cam Reddish because they just don't have the minutes for him. But for some reason, the word out of their front office is the whole team is up for grabs except for Trae and Clint Capella. So if you wanted to and you came in with the right deal, you could get anybody else on that team. I think Collins and Bogdanovich be my 2 targets. I think Bogdanovich would have the higher price tag because Collins wants out, or Collins is unhappy with his role currently. So anyway, there's the East. We'll go through it again. Starters, DeRozan and Levine, Giannis, KD, and Embiid. And then the reserves, James Harden, LaMelo Ball, Darius Garland, Fred VanVleet, Kyle Lowry, Jarrett Allen, and Jimmy Butler. Done and done. Now we'll move over to the West. Here's another one. In the West is another fun because I think there's, once again, I think there's 3 for sure locks, which is in the guard position, Curry, and then in the front court, it's Jokic and LeBron. And as much as the Lakers have been mediocre, it's through no fault of LeBron's. I mean, the guy is doing everything he can to put this team on his back. It's just there's not a whole lot around him to help. And all the more impressive is the fact that he's at 36 or 37 years old and still doing it at this level. I think it's unassailable. And also the front court position, I think this is another one where front court is weak, and on the reserves, you can make cases for a lot of different guys. I don't think there's a lot of locks. If we want to do the, hey, let's slot in another guard here, I might be for that again. So those are the 3 locks in the West, in my opinion. Now, in the other guard, right now, I would put Morant. But in my voting, I have voted once for Booker. I have voted once for CP3. I have voted once for Donovan Mitchell. And I have voted a couple times now for Morant. Just peppering around. I think there's a lot of deserving people in that mix. I put Morant in there because he's been playing in just flat out incredible basketball as of late. And he has led the charge in the discussion. And the fans have vaulted him into second position over Luka. I think that's up for a healthy discussion, and we'll see what happens with the media members and the other players as to who they vote for. we'll get breakdowns of all that to see who voted for what where uh, in the future once all the fan voting is done, and then we have to move over to media and players, and then they release those, and then the coaches have to vote, and then they release the reserves after that point. But those would be my guards, Curry and Morant. If you want to sell me on any of the other people that I brought up as deserving of that spot, overall, I am all for it. I think, once again, I have personally voted for a number of those guys. So those are my two guards. My third front court starter, I flirted with a bunch of different names. Now, if Draymond was still playing and not out and not going to be out for a little while longer, I had voted for him several times to be a starter. I think he deserved, before he went out, deserved to be on this team. If you look at the numbers, they're 2-4, something like that, since he's been out. But their overall offensive and defensive numbers have plummeted since he's gone out, and their net rating has plummeted. They're just not the same team. When he's in there, he makes up for a lot of errors and anything on defense, makes them more switchable, and is great defensive floor general. And then on offense, he's just somebody that can ping the ball around, sees the court well, and could direct traffic there. Find guys on cuts, set screens, do all the little things. And it's something their offense needs because they have shooters for days. So someone out there to do the blue collar work is kind of huge for the Warriors. But he is out. So don't think, and he has no real shot of being a starter. So I think the vote or the position should go to Rudy Gobert. I would choose Rudy Gobert. If you go and look at the numbers, it's unassailable. With his win shares, he's still a beast on defense. I think right now, Vegas odds, he's in second place for Defensive Player of the Year. Might be third, but I believe he's second. The offensive rating when he's out there is, if not the best in the league, he's like top 3. All kinds of different metrics. He's just having another monster season. He's shooting over 70% from the floor with attempting 0 threes. But just flat out having an incredible season. So I think Gobert deserves the nod as the starter. Now, to get into the reserves, here's another one where guards, I can do guards all frickin' day long. Once again, it goes 2 guards, 3 forwards, and then 2 wild cards. But as evidenced by the East, we can kind of throw that out. It's a little more fungible. So I have Booker and CP3, my two guard positions for sure, making it. The Suns deserve 2. And then after that, for the wild cards, as of right now, the 2 wild cards, you got Donovan Mitchell, you got Luka. You could talk me into Shai Gilgeous, even though all the stuff that I said about Trey, for Shai, it's like that team's a tough out on any given night. And they're only, in the West? Sorry, I'm looking up the games back difference. Yeah, so they're the same as the Hawks. They're 4 games out. But I think they have a more legitimate chance of climbing to the top of that scrap heap. And I really like watching him play. And his teammates seem to rally around him. I also take in the history of previous Trey stuff where teammates had to yell at him, stop being so selfish. And then he had the petulant game of, you don't want me to shoot? Fine, I won't shoot. And let's see how good we do. And it just exhibited leadership skills that I think aren't the best to the long-term health of a team. Um, Whereas Shea seems like everybody really enjoys playing with him. I think they easily could make a run and end up in that 10th position. I don't. I think they're as good as any of the teams that are above them right now in Portland, Sacramento, San Antonio, and New Orleans. Their record may not indicate it, but if you watch them, they're frisky and they're interesting. Between him, Giddy, Dort, and the collection of young unknowns they've got beyond that, it's an interesting team. Do I think Shea's going to make it? No chance in hell. But those are the guys now, and you could also make a case for Desmond Bane, or maybe Anthony Simons, or DeJounte Murray. Of those choices, I would take Desmond Bane. He's having a hell of a season. A hell of a season. And should the Grizzlies have two representatives? Because I think the Jazz should get two. I think the Warriors should get two. I think the Suns should get two. And then screw it. Let's have all top four teams then get two, because the Jazz technically are sitting right below the Grizzlies. So should a second, Grizzly make it onto this list? Quite possibly. As far as forwards, I think Karl Anthony Towns has a fairly unassailable case, and he's already getting a lot of the buzz. So I think Towns is going to make this list. His defense has gotten modestly better. And he's carrying an offensive load, and that team is in the mix to make the playoffs. They're currently sitting in 7th position. That's not saying a whole hell of a lot, though, because that's right at 500, 22-22, tied with the Lakers. The Clippers are a half game back of that, and then there's the real drop-off. So the T-Wolves could maintain this position, but being in 7th, and he's a previous All-Star, and you look at his numbers, you're like, all right, I'm fine with Cat making it on. I still question his effort and the petulant face he makes when things aren't going 100% his way, rubs me the wrong way. But I'll give a nod to Cat. So then after that, the next forward position I would give to a Warrior. And if Draymond isn't going to make it, then Wiggins should. The Warriors have been, by and large, at various times in this season, the best team in basketball. Now, they're currently not. By record, that goes to the Suns. And the Suns already have two representatives as far as I'm concerned. So I think the Warriors deserve a second one. And I'm not sure if Draymond is going to meet the threshold for coaches, especially if he's going to be out for a little bit longer. And if he ends up missing, 10 to 12 games by the time he comes back, it's like that's a tremendous number of games. Whereas Wiggins has been there. His consistency and scoring output have ticked up. And he's finally kind of established who he is and what he is in this league. And so that would be my choice. So then after that, you have your third forward position. Now, for that third forward position, once again, so if Wiggins is going to make it, you still have Green in the mix, but I don't think you're going to get 3 Warriors on this, and I don't know that they deserve to have 3 on there. You have PG, but Paul George, with that ulnar injury, is now going to be out even longer. And unfortunately, had he started the season missing this many games and then been playing up until now, I think PG would be on this list. But he's going to be out through, or perhaps coaches vote him on knowing that he'll not play and they'll have an injury substitute and they can sub him out. But, if that's the case, I'm not against it. He's had a great season. But let's just assume that he's not going to make it on. So PG is out. So after that, Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Ingram, and potentially Anthony Edwards. And I think of those, I guess I am most likely to kind of skew towards, although Anthony Edwards is a guard, so that kind of undercuts that argument. But um, I guess I would skew towards Jaren Jackson Jr., even though I think Desmond Bane has had the more interesting season. And if the other teams in that West, I said DeJounte Murray, Rashawn, as a potential for the guards. But I guess I go, I'd like it to see, I like that position, the second one on Memphis, I think it's a 6 one way, half a dozen the other for Bane or Jaren Jackson Jr. I think they've both been really good, but Bane I've been wildly impressed by when I watch him. Much more than when I watch Dylan Brooks, it's a whole lot of no, yes. Where you're like, no, I don't know about this shot. Like, you got to love his confidence, and simultaneously, it's got to be frustrating as all hell if you're a Grizzlies fan sometimes, because the guy is more than willing to shoot, like he's Klay Thompson, second fiddle to the star. And it's a great thing to have. And when it pays off, it is electric. But there are times when he can easily shoot them out of it. Whereas Desmond Bane seems like he picks his spots much more judiciously. It has a better feel for the game. But if we're going to try and squeeze on two Grizzlies, I don't think Bane has vaulted above the other guards in the West as locks, which would be Mitchell and Luka. So your four with the two wild cards once again going to guards would be Devin Booker, CP3, Donovan Mitchell, and Luka Doncic. And perhaps it's a too little too late for the Memphis. They've just, they've been on this surge, but had it been more consistent over the course of, and they've been roughly in this 3 position for longer. But I think that's kind of splitting hairs. You're at where you're at right now. That should count for something. So then do we give that last guard position to Jaren Jackson Jr.? Why not? Why not? I'm fine with that. Because then it doesn't, we're not rewarding teams that haven't performed to the degree that they should potentially have a deserving all-star. And it would keep the same metric for something that I used for Trae Young. If the team performance is so bad, then why are we rewarding the individual? So somebody like Shai Gilgeous or DeJounte Murray or Brandon Ingram, it would keep them out, because I'm not entirely sure if your team is playing that awful, you're deserving of it. So screw it. All right, that one was easier. Fine. If we're just going to settle on Jaren Jackson Jr., then your starters would be Curry, Morant, Jokic, LeBron, and Gobert, and then reserves Devin Booker, CP3, Donovan Mitchell, Luka Doncic, Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, and Jaren Jackson Jr. I think in the West, there's going to be a big difference in that. The East, I think Tatum is the biggest that'll make it on, that I don't have on my list. Hell, him and Trae Young. And then in the West, I could see PG getting voted on, and then just know it's an automatic, injury replacement. And to be curious as to whether or not Wiggins makes it. But there we go. There are my 2 sets of all-stars who I think is deserving of starting. Who will actually start is a completely different discussion. And I can't wait to see what, the ultimate, the fan vote is kind of unimportant to me. And I'm glad that the fan vote no longer dictates entirely what happens with the starters, just because you get the right block of individuals voting for you. You can get, I mean, it's like the Zaza, where he almost got voted into the All-Star starters because his home country all banded together and were like, screw it, we're voting for Zaza to get him into the All-Star game. So to kind of stymie shenanigans like that, I think is good. And between the fans and the media and the players, I think you get a fairly accurate representation of who should be the starters on this. I'm hoping for Morant because he'll bring a lot of fun to the game. And then having a couple Cleveland guys playing in Cleveland will be a lot of fun. So I think there we go. I think that is going to be today's show, talking a little All-Stars. My thanks to everybody that joined in the chat. So Ramon Cook, Yuri Mugerli, Rashawn Robinson, Chris Quevedo Jr., Daniel Savoy, mild-mannered comic nerd, and I think that is Marcus Driscoll, and I think that's everybody individually. I can go through, see if there's anything that I missed specifically that is pertinent to this. So Ramon says, hello to everybody. So Ure says, as much as I support my fellow countryman Luke, I hope he takes not being an all-star starter as a wake-up call. Potentially. We'll see. We'll see how it shakes out at the end of the year. Because if he ends up, with a nice all-NBA team, then maybe he'll just be able to look at it and say, well, look, it's not me, it's the team, even though it took him 15 games to get into shape type of thing. Rashawn Robinson says, tonight we're taking the Bulls' #1 spot. Look, it's possible. It is possible. I'm not saying we're not playing like a wounded animal right now, but we haven't been playing as well as of late. And I don't mind like a blowout loss with the Warriors because you're going to have those games over the course of a season every once and again. It's just the 4-game slide has not been the funnest to watch or the most fun to watch. So Chris Quevedo says, if there's an injury reserve in the East, I hope Mobley gets the nod. I really like him. And it's between him and Scotty Barnes as far as rookie of the year. But this is also one of the best rookie classes in a while. There's a whole bunch of dudes that are interesting and more than likely going to have long, fruitful careers. So Rashawn Robinson says, Nost, how is lock for 6th man of the year Tyler Hero not part of the All-Star? Because I don't think you're going to get more than 2 All-Stars for the Heat. And I think Butler's definitely going to get one of those positions. And it comes down to the other one. Hero could make it over Lowry. It's possible. But when you look at the number of guards in the East, I think other guys are going to get the vote over both of those individuals, and I don't think they're going to make it. So moving on, a lot of people, discussing the Heat or inner chat or talking about where I just got to, on the list. So people talk about like a Durant would be fun in the All-Star game. Saville asks, is Zion Williams Morant going to be the new Odin Durant? Yeah, potentially. After watching them back when I did the show on Collider, I remember I had Mark Fernandez on, and he posed that question. If you had to choose right now, who would you take between the two? And I chose Morant just because of the health. And that was after like halfway through their rookie seasons. Like Zion's health scares the shit out of me, and it still does. And he doesn't want to play in New Orleans. And even though New Orleans has no intentions of trading him right now, this might be the best time to trade him. But then what does that do to the fan base? They got another top-tier caliber player like Anthony Davis, and that person is right out the door again. Rashawn Robinson asked about Aaron Gordon making it. No chance. 0 chance of that. It's the Jokic show, and everybody knows it. Marcus Driscoll says Jaren Jackson is playing amazing defense for Memphis also, which should bolster his case. I agree with that. Ure says he's not an all-star, but I wish Porzingis' name would get tossed around a bit. He's been taking great steps towards getting back in unicorn form this season. Sure. And if by the end of the season, the Mavs are in real playoff hunt, they look like a threat. Well, unfortunately, we don't do the All-Star game then, but if we did, perhaps he would get into that discussion then. He's just been so up and down over the course of his career, just with injuries and whatnot. But then I think also his mentality with the Mavs, not wanting to be second fiddle to Luka, and then eventually resigning himself to the fact that I'm not going anywhere. So I might as well get accustomed to this and just make the best of it. So Chris Quevedo says, which rookie do you like more, Wagner or Giddey? Great question. I've watched more Giddey as of right now. I'm a little bit biased towards that because I don't much care for watching the Magic right now because, once again, it's a collection of I don't know what the hell this team is. But Wagner has been pretty fantastic. And then Owen Hart jumping into the chat late, right before I close this up. He's not going to make an all-star team because the team sucks and his numbers aren't that outstanding, but I think SGA is an absolute star in the making. I agree. The ice water in his veins trope that D'Angelo Russell has now created a pantomime for. I think he's got it. I definitely like him as one of the next generation of guys late in game who do you need taking a shot. I'm not upset if SGA is one of those guys. So Chris Quevedo, I'm assuming this is his rookie ladder. Mobley, Scotty, Barnes, Giddey, Wagner, and then Cade Cunningham. All excellent choices. All right, I think that's it, guys. It's an excellent episode. Thanks to a lively chat and everybody that joined me over in the chat today. If you'd like to participate, I do it live on YouTube or youtube.com/dropping dimes every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So join us over there. There's a collection of individuals that manage to make time for this every week. My thanks to all of you that do. And hopefully we can add to these numbers. That is it. I'll see you guys next week with another edition of Dropping Dimes. If you want to follow me, you can do it at Matt Nost anywhere on Twitter and Instagram. And that's it. See you guys next week with a brand new episode. Until then, adios.